Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1148A, and today's date is December 9th, 2016, and the title of the episode is Central Bankers Tested Bailouts, Bail-ins, Banning Cash, Next, Gold Confiscation. Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, yesterday we were discussing the market and how it might go over 20,000. Now, of course, we understand why this is happening. We realize that the elite, the central bankers, well, they're pushing this economy into overdrive. They want you to believe, they want you to understand that Obama, he created an economy that is incredible. And they want you to understand this. This is why we're seeing this right now. Because when Trump, and now we're hearing that maybe he will not be sworn in, maybe something will happen, but we'll have to see. And when he gets into office, and let's say he does, we'll go with that, they're going to say the economy was incredible, and during Trump's presidency, during his term, the economy fell apart because of what he has done. Now, they might shift this to another country, another group, depending on how this all plays out. But we see what they're doing right now. Let's take, for example, consumer confidence. It's all over the corporate media that Americans are very confident in their current conditions, and they haven't been higher than this since July of 2005. Now, when we look back in time and we look at the UMich consumer confidence, we see that it reached all-time highs in the middle of 2007, approaching 2008. And you know what happened after that. The entire economy fell apart. Well, we're at the same level as we were back then. Kind of scary, because it looks like we're repeating the same exact pattern. When we look at the stock market, we were at 14,000 and change in the Dow during the 2008 year, the highest ever. People were amazed. It's unbelievable. Well, here we are approaching 20,000. And of course, the corporate earnings, the sales, everything doesn't fit. We know what's happening. We know the Fed is creating, covertly, currency like crazy, shoving into the stock market. They're just shoveling it in to boost this as high as it possibly can. And what's very interesting is that the Federal Reserve, they released its latest progress report. And it reported that the net worth of households and nonprofits, they're lumped together, rose in the third quarter by 1.8% or $1.59 trillion to a record $90 trillion. That's up 6% or $5.2 trillion from a year ago. Now, that 12-month increase of $5.2 trillion is larger than the GDP of Japan. They're saying the total household net worth is now nearly 5 times the size of U.S. GDP in 2007. And that was the top of the bubble during that period. And household net worth was $66.5 trillion, or about 4.5 times the size of GDP before it all blew up. And we're at 90 trillion. We're at the top of the bubble. How do you think this is going to play out? It's going to be a complete disaster. But the question is, who has all this wealth? Because the Fed had another report where they reported that 46% of adults do not have enough money to cover a $400 emergency. They'd have to sell some furniture or charge it on their maxed out cards to get by. Bankrate.com also found that 63% of Americans don't have enough savings to pay for a $500 to $1,000 emergency. So the question is, who has all this wealth? Well, we know where it went. It went to the elite, the top echelon, because in the end game, they're extracting all the wealth. That's what they're doing. Now, when we look at wholesale inventories, we see a familiar pattern. And when we look at all these indicators, we see a very, very familiar pattern. Right now, for the third month in a row, wholesale inventories dropped year over year, tumbling about 0.4% in October. And when we look at this and we go back in time, we go back to the year 2000, well, we saw the same thing happen. Fast forward to 2007 going to 2008, we saw the same exact thing happen. We're at that point right now, once again, which means we're heading into a depression, because at this point we should already be in a recession. And we've looked at many different indicators that are flashing red lights showing us that we are already in that recession/depression. And it looks like the central banks, well, they're almost complete with all their testing. What do I mean by that? Well, if you remember back, going back in time, they tested the bailouts. How would that work? That was in 2008. How will people react to this? Well, people did it. They didn't like it. The United States passed a law, no bailouts. Other governments passed laws, no bailouts. That didn't work that well. Then they went a step further. And I said, all right, let's try bailing Cyprus. Let's see how people react. Oh, it didn't go over so bad. We're able to lock their accounts. Not many people protested, rioted. We're able to swap out their currency for other worthless paper. We're able to have capital controls for over a year. That test went over pretty darn good. Then we went to Greece. Let's see if we can do the same exact thing there. Many people took their cash out of the bank prior to bailing. Well, this is a problem. So what did they do? They started up the story talking about banning cash. Europe, the 500 euro. India, the 500 rupee. The United States, the $100 bill. They started the talks, putting it out there. And then in India, they tried it. Well, it didn't go as well as they thought, but people brought in their currency and exchanged it for smaller bills. The beginning of banning cash. And now in India, they're going to the next test. Because we know the currency, well, that isn't the wealth of the people. They want gold. They want assets. If you really think about it, this is what the central bankers do. They put a country into debt. They give them worthless paper. And then once the country is so far into debt and there's nothing else they can do, the creditors, the bankers, all of them, they swoop in and they purchase their assets for pennies on the dollar. And of course, what do? They use worthless paper to purchase these hard assets. Well, this is what they're going to do to the people. And in India, well, they are beginning to confiscate gold. And what they're doing is the government is allowing the tax officials to go into people's homes, to go through their things, looking for gold. It could be gold jewelry. It could be bars. It doesn't really matter. And the government clarified, among other things, the rules governing when tax officials could seize gold. So nothing would happen if the holding is limited to 500 grams per married woman, 250 grams per unmarried woman, and 100 grams per male. It also said there would be no limits on jewelry provided it is acquired from inheritance Also, the officer conducting the search has discretion to not seize even higher quantity of gold jewelry. What this means, unfortunately, is that India's income tax officers, they've just won the lottery. During a raid, they can on the spot decide whether or not to confiscate families' gold holdings. And remember, the people of India, they hold a lot of gold. Approximately about 20,000 metric tons of inherited gold. So they want to see how the people react. They want to see what the people are going to do. This happened here in the United States, where it happened a little differently, where the United States came in and gave people worthless paper for their gold. I think it was $20 an ounce. And as soon as they had all the gold, they upped it to $35. Well, this time around, the entire system is plagued with debt. They want your hard assets. They want whatever you have. And they're coming for it. And you can see over time how they are testing this step by step by step, very slowly, very methodically, to make sure people don't realize what's going on. But when you start putting all the pieces together and you're lining it up and you see what's going on, you see exactly what they're doing. Because sooner or later, all of this is going to happen in each and every one of these countries. And those people who keep their currency, that don't have gold, who haven't hidden their gold, well, guess what? It's going to disappear. And you need to protect yourself. You need to be prepared. Is it going to happen on day one when everything collapses? No. Remember, just because the stock market comes down, 10,000 points, let's say it's cut in half. It doesn't mean that everyone's going to be running around in the streets with their hands up saying, oh my God, we're collapsing. No, people are going to be sitting there going, okay, it fell. It's going to go back up. It always does. Because this is what we've been told, right? The corporate media, the president, the central bank, they're all going to come out there and tell you it's fine. People are not going to get that excited. People have been brainwashed into being very calm in these situations because they think everything will be fine because the government just told us it's going to be fine. And it's going to happen very slowly. People are not going to realize that as we move along, that things are getting worse and worse and worse. And a couple weeks in, that's when people are going to go crazy. That's when people are going to say, something's wrong here. I can't get fuel. I can't get goods from the market. Something is happening. But of course, the corporate media, the president, the central bank, they're still going to tell you everything is fine. This is why you need to be prepared. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.